Hey leaders, this is Jake again, here to talk to you about some general safety practices for mission leaders that you will employ while you are on the ground. So let's jump right in. Before we talk about safety and risk management, I just want to talk about what mindset we should have when going into this type of thing. The first is that we should be cautious and not paranoid. Yeah, things can happen on mission, but it doesn't mean that we need to be walking around expecting that everything in the world is going to harm us. Risk exists everywhere, and we do our best to avoid it. We do our best to avoid dangerous situations or sticking out or anything while we're traveling that would put us in harm's way. As the leader on the mission trip, you are going to assist the director in these safety practices and also keeping the students and our chaplains safe. Now, the director always has the final call on safety, unless you really believe that they're doing something totally wrong, which case it would be good to discuss that with them. While you're on the ground, also please submit to your director, be on board with what they're asking as far as risk management and safety, so that the students see that you're being obedient to them, and that will just help them also listen to what the director has to say. If you do think that the director is doing things that are unsafe or that put somebody in immediate danger, speak up right away if it's going to put someone in directly into harm's way. But if it's something that can wait till later, don't try to call the director out in the front of the group. Later, just pull them aside one-on-one and just see what they were thinking about when they made the decisions that you disagree with. While we're traveling, we always want to be confident, look like you belong, speak with a firm voice if necessary, walk like you have a purpose, be decisive, don't look flustered. Yeah, just act like you fit in because you do. You do belong there. The Lord has called you there, so try to carry an air of confidence when you're traveling on mission. And the final thing I want to mention is liability. So we take thousands and thousands of people on mission trips. And as the leader, you do represent Focus as a whole, not just Focus Missions, but Focus. There's kind of a silver bullet term that lawyers use that's called gross negligence. And gross negligence, if somebody thinks that the leaders or the director or Focus were being grossly negligent, that can mean bad things for Focus and can really harm the company, the organization. So while we're on mission, we're not going to do things like dares. We're not going to do the odds game. We're not going to do practical jokes. We're not there to do crazy risky opportunities like ziplining or skydiving or anything like that. It's a mission trip, not your Instagram story. So just know that your director might have to say no to some of those things, but please just get on board and try to not carry liability with you in your actions. And also don't let the students do those things either. So now we're going to jump into some general risk mitigation strategies or just general safety practices. So these safety practices apply to every trip. They mitigate or they lower the risk of a number of situations, and we've learned that they really do work. We've sent thousands of people around the world, and these safety practices are effective. And during the trip, they are always to be followed. So the first thing I want to talk about is specific situational awareness. As we're walking around, as we're traveling, you might find that random people are going to try to engage you. That's okay, but just make sure that they don't engage you for too long. Just speak in a firm voice and tell them that you're not interested or to please leave. Don't allow other people to attach themselves to your group. So if you're walking from one place to the other and you see someone following you in the group, the best thing to probably do would be to make sure first that they really are following you, just by watching them, and then have a few men just kind of stop, separate from the group, let the group go ahead and just kind of ask him what he's doing. You're also going to just want to be sure that you're watching who is watching you. We really don't want to draw too much attention to ourselves. And if we have 10 people all in the same street that are just looking at us, that can be a funny situation. So just be aware of who is watching you. And if someone is watching you, the best thing to do is probably just leave the area. And also watch out for crowds that are starting to gather. Oftentimes demonstrations or protests or riots happen very quickly, and we don't want to be caught in the middle of those. So we're just going to leave right away. So if you see a crowd, especially a rowdy crowd gathering, the best thing to do is to leave the area. So overall, specific situational awareness, just have your head on a swivel. You don't need to be Jason Bourne, but just make sure you are aware of what's going on around you. Next thing you want to do with the group is always keep a low profile. Please act with maturity. Don't be loud and crazy and screaming all the time and singing loud songs in the streets when no one else is. We just want to keep the group noise down. We also don't want to draw attention to ourselves by wearing bling, wearing big watches, rings, necklaces, like ear pods, putting our cell phones all around the place. We want to keep our belongings discreet so as to not draw attention to the fact that we may have nice things. We also don't want to draw attention to ourselves or the group by giving away gifts or money in public. Sometimes that is okay if you talk to the host, but we don't just want to do that. Generally, that can draw attention towards us to show that we have money, that we are here to do something good, and sometimes that can draw attention that we don't want. So overall, please try to help your director keep the group to a low profile. Men, watch out for women. So whenever we're traveling, whenever we're walking through the roads, we want to make sure that the men are kind of on the exterior of the group and that the women are on the inside. Things like catcalling or maybe inappropriate touching do happen. They can happen, but that is greatly mitigated by the fact that men just stay on the outside. We call it shamar the rear, which basically just means that the men should protect the women by walking behind them, walking on the sides of them so that they can see what's going on at all times. Transportation. If there is a seatbelt available anytime you are traveling, please wear it. I don't know why it happens, but whenever we step outside the country, it's like, oh, seatbelts just must not work because no one ever wears them. But right when we come back to the U.S., everyone buckles up. So on mission, if there's a seatbelt, just put it on. It's worth it. Have your students put it on. If you do it with confidence, so will they. Do not ride motorcycles under any circumstances. We have had injuries on motorcycles before, so let's just avoid that. And also no riding in the back of pickup trucks. We just want to avoid that situation as well. The next thing we want to implement is the buddy system. This should be established at orientation. If your director forgets, that's okay. Just remind them that before you leave for international travel to establish this buddy system. You're going to use this buddy system every time you're leaving somewhere, every time you arrive somewhere, to make sure that you have the entire group. And you're not just pairing people up, but as you see this circle here, you're going to have people partner up looking towards their right or looking towards their left, so that if a pair is gone, then you guys will actually know. Because if you just pair up, if an entire pair is gone, no one will know. So please implement the buddy system. Curfew. Everyone needs to be in their accommodations by 10 p.m. every night. Your mom was right when she told you that nothing good happens after 10 p.m. And the majority of the places that we go are safe, but they're even safer before 10 p.m. So we're just going to make sure that we are in the accommodations before then, unless your host sees it fit that you need to travel back or that you're going to be a little later, then we will respect that decision for them. And the director of the trip also has to stay awake until everyone else is home. So if people are out doing their own thing, the director has to be awake to ensure that everyone returns. So you as the leader get to go to bed, which is great. Never go out alone and never travel alone. No participant should ever be by themselves. I don't care if you're a 6'5", 250-pound guy, you're not going out by yourself on mission. We don't want any groups going out that are smaller than 3 people. And within that 3-person group, there should be a male, a leader, and somebody with a working cell phone. So you could have 2 girls, and then you can have a male leader with a cell phone. You could have a male student with another girl, and then say a female leader with a cell phone. There's many combinations that you can make, but that we want to make sure that there's a male, a leader, and a working cell phone in every group if you do need to separate. Assembly points. So everywhere we go, where we're staying, where we're working, when we're traveling, we want to establish an area to meet in case there's an emergency, or just to meet so that everybody knows where to be at a certain time. If someone's not at the assembly point at a certain time, then that's a good indicator to us that maybe we need to go look for them. Maybe we need to figure out where they are. So just make sure that your director establishes these. If they don't establish an assembly point where you're staying or where you're working, just give them a gentle reminder. I'm sure they just forgot. Alcohol policy. Okay. On mission, we're going to keep it simple. No alcohol on mission. The only time you can drink alcohol on mission is if it's served to you by your host, and it would be rude to say no. So that does happen, and that's okay. Enjoy it if it's given to you. However, we're not going to go in search of alcohol. We're not going to go get beers at night with you guys. We're just not going to drink on mission. It's caused a few problems in the past, so we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And then also never pay for alcohol with focus money if you do have the opportunity to drink with the host. Social media usage. We do institute the social media fast, which means that people should not be posting things to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. We also institute this for safety reasons, because we don't want people checking in everywhere that we go so that people can see exactly where we are. Or we don't want a picture like this one to the left where it could be alarming that someone's taking a selfie with men with machine guns. Even though that may be a perfectly safe situation, if mom and dad see that, they're probably not going to be too happy. So overall, just don't use social media. Don't post alarming things like, hey, we're working in a tuberculosis ward today. Isn't tuberculosis contagious? Which has happened on mission before. It just gives gives alarm that's not necessary and may get people worried in cases that don't require worry. So please don't allow your students to post things on social media, and you yourself also don't do that on mission. Phone plans. Okay, this was new in 2019, but all leaders, all 4 leaders, if there are 4 on the mission trip, need to have access to a working cell phone. So you as the leader have a responsibility right now that I'm giving you to make sure that your cell phone will work internationally. It doesn't mean that you need to necessarily buy an international phone plan, but contact your provider and ask them if you do need to make a phone call in an emergency situation abroad, if your phone will work. If they say yes, great, you can move on. If they say no, then maybe you do need to purchase a low-grade international phone plan. Also on this, we will never take a student's cell phone. You or the director or the chaplain, no one will ever take a student's cell phone, because in an emergency situation, if the student wants to have their cell phone on them, that's great. We would love for them to have it. If we take away their cell phone, it's actually putting liability on us because we have not given them that resource. So we don't want them to use their cell phones all day, but we don't want to physically take away their cell phones. The next thing is to rely on your host. Your host lives in the area. They're a local. They have safely lived there their entire lives or part of their lives, so please rely on their advice. Remain with your host. If not necessary, don't separate from your host. And also ask your host for any safety information that you think is pertinent, like, hey, we're going to this shopping market for a couple hours to have some fun and go buy souvenirs. Is there anything that we should know as we're walking around? Things like that would be really good. So please defer to your host on safety matters, and yeah, stick with them on mission. Communicating with parents. So in the case of an emergency, all communication should go through the Focused Missions Department to the parents. It's easiest for us to communicate with them calmly to explain the situation and what is going on. And if we have students directly reaching out to parents, it could create just a lot of unnecessary chaos that otherwise could be avoided. Also, there are such things as perceived dangers. An instance of this would be in Indonesia. Indonesia is almost 2,000 miles long. We had a mission trip out going to Indonesia at the time, and there was a terrorist attack on one side of Indonesia, and parents called super worried that their students were going to be going there in about a month. What they didn't know is that the terrorist attack took place over 1,500 miles away from where the group is going to be. So that is a perceived danger. When parents see something in the news, they think immediately that it's going to affect their child on mission. So if there's an attack in India, well, India is the size pretty much of the United States, so it's a huge area, and lots of different things can be perceived. It's like saying there was a shooting in New York when we live in Colorado. Parents might not understand that there is a large geographic space in between their student and the danger, so we don't want for people to call parents and start getting them worked up. All parent communication will go through the missions department. Dogs. Please do not pet dogs. Dogs in other countries may have diseases. They're also probably not friendly. It's happened many times on mission before where one dog or a couple dogs will chase after you, kind of that they're going to attack you, and all you have to do is pick up and throw an invisible rock. You just put your hand above your head, or you reach down and pick up an invisible rock and pretend to throw it, and the dog normally stops in its tracks. So just they are used to being have rocks thrown at them, unfortunately, so it normally deters them from coming and biting you. But please also, yeah, just don't pet the dogs, leave them alone. Food. So we're going to avoid street food at all costs. We really don't want to be eating food on the street because you never know what it's going to do to you or the people on the trip. We've had many instances of people getting food poisoning. Here's a few general safety practices if you are going to eat food on the street, but overall we just don't want it to happen. Please defer to your director. Allow them to make that choice for the host. The host normally knows what is good to eat and what is not, but overall we just don't want to eat the street food. Ocean safety. All right. One of the biggest risks that we have on mission trips is ocean safety. So before swimming, the director needs to give a safety briefing, talking about things like taking clues from the locals. If they're not swimming, you probably shouldn't swim either. Not swimming in large swells, big waves, looking for rip currents, asking people if they're actually able to swim before they get into the ocean, not going too deep out into the ocean, and also swimming in pairs. So there's a few other ocean safety tips that we have, like always keep someone on the shore just in case someone needs to go get help. But please just use great caution in the ocean. Some people are very comfortable with swimming, others are not, and they might not tell you. So we need to just use caution and prudence as to whether it's okay to swim in the ocean or not. And here's a diagram for rip currents. If someone does get caught in the rip current, they're not going to fight it by swimming into shore. As you can see in the diagram, you want to swim parallel to the shore to get out of the rip current and then swim to shore. Rip currents are real things, and they will beat even the strongest swimmer. So please do not swim towards the shore, and also do not try to jump in and rescue somebody if you are not comfortable, if you're not able to do that, if it's not a good situation. Please call medical or emergency professionals in order to do that. Sharing personal contact info. So on mission trips, we really don't want to give away personal contact info, things like phone numbers, addresses, emails, Facebook accounts, anything like that. If you want to share, if you're feeling that it's really necessary for you to keep in touch with someone that you meet on mission, that can be a very good thing, but please talk to your host and your director about it before you or any of the students do that. All right, now we're going to talk about some emergency protocol, the last part of our little webinar here. So your director has been trained on emergency protocol, but we also want to give you just a brief training on it as well. Let's say that your director is sick and away from the group and can't handle the emergency, or maybe something happens to your director, God forbid, that you would need to handle the emergency. So the type of emergencies that I'm talking about would be some large-scale threats like terrorism, natural disasters, kidnapping and ransom or extortion, civil unrest, but then also medical emergencies. Someone gets in an accident or something just really bad happened to somebody. So these are the types of emergencies that you're going to want to put this emergency protocol into place for. And whenever you're in doubt, if you're not sure if something is an emergency or not, I would err on the side of caution and treat it like an emergency instead of not, and learning that we should have later. So we're just going to talk briefly about what to actually do if an emergency happens. So in an emergency situation, no one ever knows really how they're going to react. So the first thing that you want to do is just breathe and calm down. When we breathe, we get an oxygen flowing back into the brain. We're able to think, we're able to reason. So first thing, we need to calm down, and we need to keep the people around us calm as well. The next thing, step number 2 that you want to do is stabilize. Stabilizing the situation looks different depending on what the emergency is. The one I want to highlight is, let's say there's a medical emergency, a car crash, or someone gets hit by a car or something else like that. The first thing always that we want to do is take care of the victim. We want to get emergency services. We want to get them to the hospital. We want to make sure that they're getting the best care that they can. If we need to treat them somehow before emergency services get there, that's what we need to do. We always care first and foremost about the person who was injured. So we're not trying to get insurance information from the other driver, or we're not trying to just do things that aren't going to save the person. So stabilizing the situation means make sure that there are no immediate threats. If medical assistance is necessary, get it. If getting out of the area to keep the rest of the group is necessary, to keep the rest of the group safe is necessary, then get out of the area. So stabilizing the situation, taking care of any immediate threats that may be there. The next step is going to be call. Now, we'll go through later who you're going to call, but possibly you're going to call local emergency services. You're going to call the host. You're going to call the travel insurance to find a hospital, or to find out what the government's going to do. Maybe you need to call the embassy if there's civil unrest to see what you should do. And then also you need to call Focus Missions, because we also have an emergency response team that we will activate in the case that it is needed. So you're going to make phone calls after the situation is stabilized. The last thing you might need to do is gather resources. In a large-scale disaster, civil unrest or natural disaster, earthquake, volcanoes, things like that, you might need to gather food and water really quickly. Go back to your accommodations if it's safe. So gather the things that you're going to need very quickly, get as much of it as you can, and then hunker down. Now, this is also where you're going to find emergency numbers to call in case of an emergency. So this is a staff emergency card. You're going to keep this on your person at all times, and you might need it in an emergency situation. So you'll see here's the local emergency services number. You're going to write down here the equivalent of our 911 in whatever country you're going to, and that may be a number that you'll need to use in a medical situation. You're also going to write down the address and the phone number of the nearest U.S. consulate or embassy. This will help you if there's any type of civil unrest or government upheaval or anything like that. This here is the Missions Department emergency phone number. This is a 24-hour line, and it's only in case of emergency. So it's not something smaller like, hey, someone got their cell phone stolen and we don't know what to do. That can wait, and you can talk to your missions coach about that. But this is for emergencies when you really need some more assistance or some more direction, and you need to alert focus missions of the emergency. So after you stabilize the situation, you always want to call the focus missions department in order to let us know what is going on. Also, to make a non-emergency phone call, you need to contact the missions department. Say you think you're going to miss flights, or someone in the group is just acting weird and you don't know what to do. You can call your missions coach, and if they don't answer, then you can call any of these numbers here in this order until you get someone on the missions department who can further assist you. So again, these are the emergency numbers that you can call. We also have an option for the host phone number, so that's actually the director's not able to. Again, here's the most likely order of calls, but before I go through this, I just want to say that you need to use your own prudent judgment, and your number one priority is to stabilize the situation on the ground by calling the appropriate parties first, which may be the host or emergency medical services, to take care of the immediate threat and the immediate need. And then most likely you're going to call, okay, I just said this, but most likely you're going to call emergency medical services or emergency services, then your host, and then focus missions to figure out what to do next and to alert us of what is going on. You may have noticed a couple asterisks throughout the PowerPoint, and that's just this kind of common sense disclaimer that I'll throw in there. And this is that while we do have all of these safety guidelines on mission, there are sometimes extreme circumstances that would dictate you to not follow them while on mission. For instance, if everybody is ill and you're the only one that's able to go out and get help in the group, but it's after midnight and that's technically after curfew, well, you might have to break curfew to go out and get help, and that's okay. So overall, please use common sense. You guys survive every day. You're alive and you're well. So we just want to make sure that you're using your mind to protect yourself and the students and everyone on mission that we're with. Thank you for bearing with me on this. I know that it's not the most fun topic. I know that, thinking about risk and risk management and safety protocol can be overwhelming, but just want to assure you that you guys are ready, that you are trained, that your director is ready, and even by knowing the few things that you now know after watching this webinar, you are prepared to go on mission. If you do have any questions at all, please talk to your director about it. Ask them up front, and if they don't know the answer, then they can talk to the missions coach about it. When you go on mission, please implement these things to keep everybody safe. And again, thank you so much for serving. You guys have been sent out by Jesus to go on mission, so trust in him, if nothing else. Thank you.